Hi, I just recently turned 18, but my parents canceled my party at the last second. Why? 'Cause I had a bratty older sister who wanted it. Honestly, she was not even here for the party, and I was glad. Except, because it was me that day she had to leave. All the flights were canceled on account of jumbo hurricanes in Middle America. My mom was meant to leave for NY 3 days before my birthday with all of her best friends. For now, however, they're having to delay that adventure. Which basically means that my mom and dad have been on eggshells about it, because they do not want to set her off. She has lost a lot of weight and is fragile. I mean, they wouldn't dare. After all, she is the golden girl in our family. In fact, all the way down to my birthday morning, she argued and demanded that simply, we cancel my birthday, because if it's not a fun day for her, then will it be me? Naturally, my parents sent that message to all of the guests with an invite without second-guessing themselves. I learned about it many hours later, in the evening when I was still waiting for everyone to show up. But nobody was coming by. It took until 7 that evening when I asked my parents why no one was coming to get them to tell me they had already canceled the party, without even giving a heads up. Their reason? My sister was very distraught, and they felt it wouldn't be appropriate to have a party with her so upset. So, I kind of lost my cool with them at that point, and started screaming at my parents that it was obviously not fair. My parents had always treated my sister with kid gloves far more than myself, and consistently expected me to be the accommodating one. It really was symptomatic of how it turned out at length. I always did, but this was so beyond anything I had ever done. My 18th birthday party had been an event my parents were throwing on my behalf. They invited all my friends and relatives to a big birthday party. All of it was canceled, and nobody even bothered to tell me simply because my sister wanted Liam on the trip that legitimately had to get canceled. It was not even anybody's control. My parents, cleverly, had also informed all the guests that I was suddenly taken ill, and hence their reason for canceling the party. They had literally told everyone to wait until the next day before texting me, because they knew I would end up being on my phone, and that was just what I needed with a migraine. No text messages to figure out what was happening, team meetings at the last possible minute. When my parents explained it to me, I would throw a tantrum of yelling and fighting with them. I was all too pissed off to not be demise. Still, the only thing they were worried about is me being too loud as my sister will wake up from her nap. I did not give a fuck about that. Kept on screaming until my sister came one day from downstairs and started defending our parents, saying they had never done nothing. She said she was the one who had told him that nobody should be partying or celebrating while her heart hurt so bad. And if I could not see that, then honestly I was spoiled more than anyone else. I became so enraged at how bold she was for even saying that to me after what she just did. I literally turned stupid and opened my mouth, cussing her out blindly. I grabbed her by the hair and was trying to shake. So yeah, it got physical. Our parents had to pull us apart, and I can only assume we didn't even notice the doorbell ring when it did finally stop fighting. I was positive that my parents had told everyone not to come, but when they opened the door, there stood Grandpa. My paternal grandfather is quite of a bully, and my parents are also scared to death of him. Therefore, having him at the door was bad news for them. He opened the door and walked in immediately questioning as to why there was all this screaming, cussing. He turned to me for an answer. Hey, I was swearing the loudest. Although for the most part, this too is something I would never bother telling anyone more than cis-medi apathetic toilet philosophers about. Except this time, I left absolutely nothing out. There was nothing that my grandpa did not know. I was mad at my parents and sister, and I didn't see the problem in trying to hide it anymore. And that would only make them treat me worse. But I had found my voice, and so speak up, I did. I also said it had not been the first time she was favored. It was a thing about which I had to listen this from every day of my last 18 years in life. It was one thing after another, and this incident pushed me over the edge. Next thing I know, my grandpa is just appalled. As soon as he says we can tell it's quite possibly the most annoyed you have to be. His facial expression showed how shocked he was when, in a matter of seconds, snapped at my dad and scolded him. It enabled me to learn a lot of stuff which so far I had no clue about. As he flipped through the papers, my grandpa started berating and yelling at my dad, because apparently whip avoided to happen that he had been wiring money every single month for over 2 years. We never did so good jumping Sunny spinning top, but that was the only little extra I had, because my folks have been working for years to keep their own business going and provide with our family. Up until then, it had really been my grandfather taking care of us all. Even this party my parents were going to claim as their own vision had been fully funded by Grandpa. My grandpa said it wasn't cool for my parents to have raised me this way. The way I was acting, one could very easily tell that their favoritism with my sister had traumatized me. My parents patiently listened to his concept, but my sister, being the idiot that she is, tried to get in a fight with him. She said to him that the only reason she even requested the party be postponed was because her heart broke, as her 2-month-long excitement of visiting New York, where since 3 days it is clear, you can't go anytime soon, were blowing away. She says that was so heartless of me only to have a party when she's in pain. My grandfather, however, had no time for her and the nonsense she was spouting. To her face, he tells that the audacity of ostentation on its own to expect me to cancel my 18th birthday party, just so she didn't has much disapproval about going one a trip later was mind-blowing. He said, "The world doesn't revolve around you," and I think that must have really been new to her. And my grandpa was even more livid at the cost of said sister fighting with him, and just told me parents he would no longer be helping them. He just told them that they were on their own. So he packed his things, and told me I could go with him if I wanted to move, or stay. So, obviously my parents were in on something, and they only enough to no good, because it was instead of doing that for me. Even when my grandpa said that, the only allegations I heard were in regard to my parents not getting money from him anymore. They hardly even listened to the part about him offering me a place in his home, which was why I had practically agreed. Like my grandpa said, they could care less about me. So, I wasted no time. I marched upstairs and listened to my parents pleading, bargaining with Grandpa not pulling his support. I packed up my stuff, went downstairs and left with me Grandma. A, who walked out of his son without looking back once he even apologized to me for the entire time I was in his car, taking shot of excrement. He said he wished this is a step that should have happened a long time ago. I do not know what that means, LOL, but I am just really happy are together at the moment. Overall, the only ones who have a problem with it are my parents, and they constantly been trying to get through me for years. I also have not blocked them, but I am certain to avoid them. They have called me 1,000,000 times, and messaged even more, but I haven't answered the phone, or texted back in any of them. But read them all, I did. For the next few days, my mom and dad are texting me, apologizing for their crime. They said continually that they were never very good at thinking properly through things, and explained how needed to make my sister feel safe, as she was much more fragile than me, it would damage her. With that, they inadvertently ignored me, and felt really bad about it. They made an effort to make it appear as though they were only ignoring me, because I was a manly man, too macho for them to think of as needy. But let's be real. My sister is almost 5 years my senior, and, of all people, she should have been the one who had to hold on tight a little tighter because, Lord save me, those selfish parents, were forced upon her share with siblingship. Therefore, I stopped believing my parents. For a single word. I had a hunch this was part of the show, just to get me back so my grandpa would keep providing for them. I had been hoping for an actual apology from them, just one authentic and sincere, sorry. But it never came, which was increasingly irritating me. So I told my dad to stop texting me this morning. I told them I knew they were just doing this because they wanted my grandpa to keep paying for everything. Their sorries were not needed. They had just proven to me how unimportant my birthday was by deciding for me that I would not have a party. That was pretty much the nail in coffin, and I would never return to them now. My dad wrote back instead of apologizing to me. He said they knew that they were unfair on me, Mother did too. But they apologized for it, and wanted to make amends in whatever way that could. They messed up when they said that there was nothing ever too low for them to do, because I jumped on the opportunity to tell them that if came back, told his grandpa about supporting a drawdown, provided, and only could he promise me my sister would no longer be living with us. She was 23 years old after all, and had kind of been working for the past 2. She should have enough money to move out by now. So, yeah, I really don't feel like I was that out of line here, but my parents think I am being irrational and uncaring. Would I be the asshole if I told my parents that if they want me to move back in, then she needs to be gone? Edit. So yeah, everyone wanted to know why the hell I never said anything about how my parents were treating me and such. Hey. First off, I guess if you remember my initial post, it was all very petty little things. I remember being told that if she liked it, I had to leave the last slice of pizza or whatever food we ordered for her. That even if she did not, then I was permitted to finally end it all. She also did not let me buy or wear the type of clothes she preferred. She was always herself, my parents told me, and you should never try to be anyone else. That meant I was not allowed to use something because it looks nice. We were close in size, so, for the most part, I got stuck with her hand-me-downs. I hardly ever got to buy something new, because my father found it stupid. Well, you know, that sort of things. She had always just been a big deal to my parents, and while these things are trivial in comparison, they do stack up. Sadly, I never considered this worth mentioning to any of my relatives. And then even if I had, it seems a bit over the top for anyone to have wanted to steal me away, or allow me an offer from my house. So I never said it because that would just make my parents even more pissy. I also said, my grandfather was a formidable man because he is literally everyone's favorite in the family. In his time, he was among the top attorneys and had won many challenging cases. While he is very respectful, lives a strict lifestyle, and not forgetting to mention that he is filthy rich. Obviously, everybody looks up to him in the family, so no doubts about it, that he will look the biggest and matured. He was willing to make between what my parents were doing with me, if I chose. But until last year, my grandpa has been totally preoccupied with caring for our grandmother, who was in the latter half of her final stages. He was too busy with that, and I really didn't want to fill his mind up more when he had so much going on over there, as it is by telling him getting a job off of my immediate family. My mom slips her lounge's issues. Besides, he was sad as it was. My grandma had recently died. I didn't want to seem like a Sophia. At any rate, I am so appreciative that he has made me an offer. He has always been pretty kind to me and asked if I wanted to move in with him until it was time for college. Somehow, he has also assured me that it's going to be on him until I am working. Update 1. Hello. So I have settled on maintaining the stipulation that proposed to my father and mother. It should go without saying that even if they forced my sister to leave, I have no plans in this life of staying with these fools. I only want to know whether or not they will implement them. That's all. And I will know then whether they are serious about wanting me back, and if my sister is more important than a life of good living, courtesy of their father. I have not let him in on this. To be fair, he would hide a lot of stuff from me too, and that as well I discovered later. So, I think it's fair enough. All my grandpa has to realize how much of a waste his life was is the fact that this whole time he knew about me being forced upon him by parents who didn't want me either, but never did anything. Actually, I never knew what it was that appealed to my parents so much about the daughter they favored. She possessed no virtues that could justify their preferential treatment. My grandpa set me straight about that the other day. My parents pretty much just wanted one kid at first. But then when my sister was 5 years old, along comes me. They were going to abort me, but my dad was dumb enough to say something of it in front of her parents, and they insisted that if God saw fit for them, my parents, to be gifted with another child, then who are we or anyone else? Essentially asking if they would turn away. God's blessing kind of end all, be all. Everything I should have been read this the post to. Now, my mom's parents had to talk Henry and Mom into letting me be born. But alas, they were in a very bad auto crash when my mother was 8 months pregnant. Days later, both succumbed to their injuries after fighting for life. My mom was obviously heartbroken, and she had a mental breakdown when she found out about getting pregnant after all that period of time blaming me for how much chaos I brought to her life. Afterward, she ended up in a nut house for 2 weeks, and when she came back, poof, like new. My parents began to liken me to something they would have accepted, of having aborted from their memory, if you know what I mean. My parents were planning to give me up for adoption once I was born. This time, however, my paternal grandparents made it known that they were being silly and refused for me to be put up for adoption. Unwilling parents, they raised me all the same. This was all told to me by my grandpa when I confronted him about the comment he made while taking me back home, that, I should have known better. You don't do this in private, a long time ago. Well, so this is what he meant by that. And yes, he really should have. So anyway, the truth has been revealed as to why my parents have treated me differently, and now I know I will never return to them. I who am now treating them with complete justification. It was my fault, I had been told, and they were still punishing me for it years on. Well, at the very least, I'm not like that, and revenge for things they did to me themselves. I still wish my grandpa had told me all this a little sooner, but I get that these are difficult things to talk about when you're talking to someone who is just a kid. But he's the only person I have to depend on for now, so I'm trying not be too harsh with him. Update 2. It has been a week and 4 days since I moved from the house. My parents have text messaged me trying to plead with them, that a miss in a condition we had agreed on. However, I did not answer them. I didn't think it was time to talk until they made up their minds. It had been 3 days since they tried to call or text me, and I actually expected that it was over. But then, today, as I was exiting school for the day, arving to find my sister waiting outside of it, all that reassurance took on an entirely new light and hype. Thus, I made my male friend walk me home. Being my sister's boyfriend and a football player, so he was on the bigger size, I just thought if she planned to do anything funny, at least he would be here in case of some sort retaliation. The amount of time he and I have been friends is a long one, so all but the most absolute confidence can reside in him. That idiot knows everything, including what little about my family life. So he walked me back home with the stipulation my sister follow from a very great distance. However, she followed so close and quiet, it really was getting weird. About halfway back home, I turned around and asked her what the hell was she trying to do. She said she wouldn't leave me with talking about that sort of stuff in front of a stranger. But I told her that, and honestly, I do not even want to talk with you so. Then she began telling me how our parents have been really stressed out and upset recently, a fact that has entirely to do with me and my behavior. Then she said how yesterday, our parents had finally told her that I was not coming back home, nor going to talk with my grandpa about helping them out again until they got on their feet. Unless we kicked Pearson's 0. 2. She was confronting me about it, telling her how bullshit she thought this whole thing was. I found it absurd that she thought I would honor her request with a conversation, so I simply said to her, well, if can't be happy, neither can you. The exact same logic that she had reason to have my party canceled with, which I feel should apply equally as well to her. I surveyed and went back, except she began to shout at me, that I was a terrible human being. I didn't even bother to answer or look back. I simply gave her the finger as I continued to walk alongside my friend. I guess flipping her off really pissed her off, because the next thing you know, she was attacking me. I was on the ground. I had a backpack on, so I felt not only her weight, but also the additional pressure of my back. Luckily for me, however, was my friend holding it down by the back of her spinal column, as I felt within a fraction of a second later, someone prying my sister off. When I finally got up and dusted myself off, my friend was literally picking her with one arm, and he hadn't even broken much sweat. I suppose he was justified, having to walk me at least up my driveway, in case homegirl snapped like she is so known to do, I assumed. I was extremely pissed that she had the nerve to even think of attacking me, and thought that I would get away with it. So I walked up to her, gave a really tight slap, and warned he, "If you ever try doing anything funny again," and then went on threatening her that will report at cops. Gosh, I know her parents wouldn't want any more anger from the chaos she had already caused. At that point, she still had the nerve to try and continue arguing with me, but from then on, my friend and I just walked away. But she only slapped me, and it made her stop chasing me. I told my grandpa all about it when I got back home and he was going to call the cops, but I said they were not even worth it. She was a loser, end of story, though I think she learned her lesson. Plus, I feel like she was already walking the line with our parents. The bottom line, I shared my condition that I had laid out to parents with Grandpa. I was worried my grandpa would be pissed, but he just laughed right along with me because he thought it was really clever. He said that hell, yeah, my parents deserved to get fucked with. So that was that. While I was a tad bruised on the ground, at least for once in my life, it felt right to sit there and slap the shot out of little sis, because she had that behind whipping coming long ago. I'm now praying that my parents and sister learn their lesson from this relate to me. Update 3. Hey, so it's like nearly a month that I left. I will only be staying with my grandpa for the next few months, because I am supposed to start college in September. Now my school over, 2 days before I had graduate for high school. Prom came along, and of course I was escorted by my boyfriend, the football player friend that I began speaking about in last update. Yep, a few of you called it, and I just wanted to go ahead, get this part over with before we dive into my story about my parents and big sister. Thus, 2 days after my argument with my sister, I get a text from the folks indicating that they had decided to come up with what it was they were going to do. They would let my sister stay with them, because I was obviously not someone they wanted around her. She had accused me of being jealous, petty. They said they only held out hope that I would return for my grandpa because I paid the bills at home. However, my mom's older brother had come in to be a partner and an investor of the business, so they didn't need me for that any longer, or just wanted anything else to do with me. Of course, they probably intended for this to hurt my feelings, but I had figured out what their true plan was from the very beginning. So this realization was completely irrelevant to me, and I did not even respond to that message. I guess the non-response got to them, because I received another message a few hours later saying they were going to block me now as well, since apparently I was such an awful piece of garbage, like my sister. I was horrid, and cruel-hearted as well. I even turned with violence and ingratitude. Violent, because I had slapped my sister yesterday. Not surprisingly, what provoked me was that my sister had attacked and pushed at least 3 people, including myself, onto the ground. Or better yet, as my sister must have not told them, I do not even think they knew about. Ungrateful, because how dare I speak rudely of my parents after everything they did for me? They went on to tell me how much they bore, having raised, board, and lodged you at an exorbitant amount of money. Fuck. I don't get it why some parents throw that in your face when they are feeling attacked, because to me it really just seems like you're doing the bare minimum. Which is not okay, but I guess in my parents' minds, they believe the minimum should be superior, and all of that should make them special snowflakes or something. Anywho, I wanted to reply so badly right then, but knew it would be futile. Hence, before they could block me, I blocked them, and now I am out. So, my grandpa and I are getting along very well to where another chapter was added, in that I have been accepted into many of the colleges I applied for so far. Some of the better ones I am still waiting to hear from, though he did tell me that if I was accepted, then my grandpa would pay all tuition expenses for them. We are still getting the hang of living together, and I surprisingly sometimes find myself mad at him for not rescuing me from my parents earlier. He's admitted to it, or is going now anyway. I know he will have had his own constraints too, and I couldn't ask for a better uncle than this man who cares so much about everyone around him, that it genuinely pains him to think he didn't come through when I really needed someone. But now, we are collaborating on it, so that I never have to face my parents alone again. I am praying to God they never contact me again, either. Update 4. Hello. So it seems an entire 14 years has been passed since my previous update, and on top of that, this post is full up to a limit, with the wonderful comments I've received not only in response to these posts, but also DMs as well. Right now, actually, I'm doing wonderful, and as far as I know, my other relatives have very little to do with both my parents and sister. My mom's side of the family still talks to my grandpa, but none of us talk to them because of what he did. The way I was treated, no one knew about, because guess what? You never heard me talk about it. When my grandpa started telling people that he had lost touch with my parents, what they found out is why we broke contact, and then spread the word as to how bad and evil my family was. So yeah, it turns out when things went wrong, it ended up that way. I mean, it's karma, mate, because I don't think they can pin anything on anyone else but themselves. However, I have not been entirely sure what to think has happened with my sister, until hearing from a few of my friends that she is living by herself in her own apartment for the past week. In all candor, that was the news that jogged my memory to publish for you this time. I am here with my boyfriend, and he is doing great. Also, I still go home every weekend, as long classes are, during the week at school, but it's not too far, so it works out well. In fact, I have so many new friends here, and honestly feel like a brand new person. Me and my grandpa have also gotten even closer together. He's my favorite man in this whole world, and I don't think it will ever change. He had his past mistakes, but who hasn't? Everything that he did, I have forgiven him, and we are past it all. Anyway, the point is that I'm really